All right. I think we're on and we're recorded, so we'll begin. Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Aaron Essery, Assistant Extension.
It's already started.
Yeah, we're started. Assistant Extension Specialist for Viticulture Enology here at Oklahoma State University. And today we will talk about fungal diseases and spray programs. Before I begin, I should give credit. I took a lot of information from Virtual Viticulture Academy with Mr. Fritz Westover, and also I pulled a lot of information from fungal diseases from the Grape Grower's Handbook written by Ted Goldammer. So just wanted to acknowledge them. So I'll start with fungal diseases. Or no, I'm sorry. I'll start with spray programs. I was looking somewhere else. I'll start with spray programs first. So creating a spray program. It's good to understand grapevine growth from bud break to early growth to flowering, fruit set, and more growth, because it grows all summer long. Understand the critical times for diseases, which is usually spring around bud break, 6 weeks after bud break, or 6 weeks after flowering. Understand that prevention is key. When you're spraying these fungicides, it's important to know that you're spraying preventatively. You should not spray once you see the disease, although that happens. I've done that myself, but it's best to spray in anticipation for an outbreak. Understand the chemicals, what disease.
TVs now? I guess.
I'm going to mute everybody.
Already started.
And then understand your mode of action and understand how weather impacts disease pressure. So the growth of the grapevine. Grapevines grow indeterminately. Given enough sunlight and water, they'll grow forever. But they usually grow 10 to 20 inches per week in the spring, so that's a good time for diseases. Early spring fungicides will cover young shoots, but then the shoots will grow, and then you have new growth that's not protected. This is what it means that vines can outgrow fungicide sprays, especially if they're just protectants. If they're systemic, that's a little bit better, but if they're just blanket protective fungicides, contact protective fungicides, grapevine growth, they can outgrow the fungicide, developing flowers and rachis. And then most critical times for disease control is 2 weeks pre-bloom, 6 weeks post-bloom. That's usually the best time or worst time, however you look at it, for diseases. So types of fungicides, there's protectants, which is surface only, contact, there's systemic, which gets absorbed into the plant. There's systemic post-infection, which is really no different than systemic, but post-infection means that the disease is already present. Let's say you're out scouting and it's like, oh, I see powdery mildew, spray a systemic, that'll get absorbed in and hopefully help control. And then there's eradicants, and eradicants are not at all ideal. That's eradicant fungicides is spraying to kill the disease, which again, not the best position to be in, but I feel like everyone's been there, so it happens. So protected fungicides, again, just coats the plant surface to protect against the fungus. It's done preventatively, and the best position to be in. You want to spray preventatively. So, but protective fungicides are only as good as your spray coverage. So when you are spraying, you need to make sure you are getting good coverage, good penetration. You're hitting all parts of the canopy. Again, the plant will outgrow the protection. So if you spray, in early April, you're going to have to go back again and spray in late April. Fungicides can be washed off in the rain too. Just be cautious that with an inch of rain, 50% of a contact protective fungicide can be washed off. So that's just the case of how it is. Some protected fungicides down below: Zyram, diathane, copper, captan, quintet, and sulfur. Okay, systemic fungicides. So these are fungicides that get absorbed into the plant. Spray coverage is still important, but what happens is you go through your rows, you spray your canopy, and then within hours, the plant will actually absorb the fungicide and help protect it like that. Systemic fungicides are more rain fast, which means they can't be washed off, or at least as easily, especially once they are absorbed. And it takes hours to become rain resistant. So if it's a good dry day, kind of like today, lots of sunlight, low wind, spray a good systemic fungicide, let it get into the plant, and you're going to be pretty good protected, at least for a few weeks. some systemic fungicides we use, Pristine, Profi, Ridamol, and Rally. So I'm just trying to mute everybody. Nothing personal. Thompson M. I'm sure you've seen a lot of these. I've myself used Pristine and Rally a lot. So systemic post-infection, again, kind of the same thing, but this works to slow or stop a disease that's already been infected. It's not as effective if fungal spores are visible, but again, you've all been in the vineyard, you scout, you see some black rot, it's like, oh, I should spray it, it's good. Again, just post-infection to pre-infection, it's always good to stay on the preventative pre-infection side. Okay, and then eradicants. This is the absolute worst position to be in. If you're spraying in response to a disease outbreak, it's not the best, but again, it happens. Fungicides, fungus develop resistance to fungicides. So that's why this is also not so good, is because if you're spraying in response, there's a really good chance that you'll kill some, but the fungicide will also the fungus will also mutate to develop a resistance to that fungicide. So, but there's nothing else you can do but to spray at the same time. And again, you have to get excellent coverage. You have to spray everything really good to try to eradicate a disease. And some eradicant fungicides are oxidates, stylidol, and rhodamil. I've never used these before, actually, but I'm just looking them up, and these are oxidate and stylidols are pretty good at eradicating. Your modes of action. Fungicides use different modes of action to kill or prevent fungus, in different ways. And again, fungus are pretty good at developing resistance. So it's important to always change your mode of action at least every month or so. If you're just spraying Pristine and you're always spraying Pristine, it's Pristine, 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 by the end of the growing season, fungus has developed a resistance to Pristine. So then you got to switch. That's why you switch your modes of action. You got to go to something else, Captan or Rally, or just something that's different than that mode of action. And all the mode of action, all fungicides are on the label. So just read the label, see the mode of action, note it, spray it, and then 2, 3, 4 weeks later, change the mode of action, change the fungicide, and it will help kill resistance, you see. Some examples, modes of action right there. There's respiratory inhibitors, there's sterile biosynthesis inhibitors, and then there's multi-site activity and these are just ways that the fungicide works to inhibit or kill the fungus. Fungicides with low resistance, sulfur, diethane, Captan, Zyram, copper, stylidol, and oxidate. I've used Captan and diethane personally, maybe Zyram too, I don't recall, but diethane's really good, but it has a 66-day post harvest interval. I'll get to that in a minute. So you want to use diethane early, in the season. Weather impacts. Again, rainfall. Rain spreads fungal spores and also washes off surface fungicides. So, spray. You want to spray before heavy rains, and you want to spray after rains too. But rainfall is really good at spreading diseases. Humidity, higher humidity increases fungal growth and spore germination. So especially if you're in eastern Oklahoma or southeastern Oklahoma, you're going to have much more disease pressure just because of your humidity. If you're in western Oklahoma, it's a little bit drier, you're not so much disease pressure, but still some. But higher humidity is usually more diseases. It's almost linear, like higher humidity equals higher diseases, pretty much across the board. But then temperature too. Cool to warm temperature ideal for fungal growth. And that's why springtime is such a disease time, because you have that cool to warming weather. 34 to 85 Fahrenheit is usually the degrees for almost all fungus. Temperature usually above 95 Fahrenheit. So dead of summer, you don't have as many disease pressures because fungus just doesn't grow that hot. Also, the grapevine too usually shuts down at 95 Fahrenheit. So dead of summer is not a problem, but springtime is the problem for diseases. So a spray program. We're talking about actually building a spray program and when to spray, how often I should spray, what to spray. So this is like an outline. Let's say, 2 to 10 inches of shoot growth. I would use manzate diethane, which is a mancozeb active ingredient. Down at the bottom, you see in the yellow, mancozeb has a 66-day post-harvest interval. That's PHI is post-harvest interval. And that means that you can only spray that 66 days prior to harvest. So if you're harvesting in August, you have to count backwards on the calendar and say, okay, I can't spray after June or whenever that day would be. So just note that, and all the labels tell you your post-harvest interval. So early in the growing season, I would hit it with diethane, or Prophyte or Thompson M, Raleigh, Carbaryl. Carbaryl's an insecticide. I'll get to that later. But then still at fruit set, you can alternate pristine. Once you have fruit set and your berries start to develop, you probably want to switch to a Raleigh or a pristine or Revis Top. Again, I haven't used all of these, but I'm just looking and researching. And then pre-verasion, Captan, Verasion, Zampro, and then 3 weeks before harvest is probably your final spray. I think most fungicides have a 14 to 7 day post-harvest interval. If you're going to harvest September 1st, I can't spray August 15th, so 3 weeks is usually your cutoff time, get your last sprays in. And it just comes with time and experience and knowing your fungicides and your products and what works best for you. This is an example I kind of made, and I made this example off of a real spray program that I used in Fredericksburg. We sprayed 5 times in Fredericksburg, maybe 6 from what I recall. But an 8 spray during a season is good. I mean, again, if you can do it and afford it. I know these chemicals can be expensive, but this is just something I would do, and I'll probably really implement at our research vineyard. Early April, diethane, mid-April, mancozeb or Manzate. Diethane and Manzate are the same active ingredient. They're just 2 different brands. And then I would just switch pristine Raleigh, pristine Raleigh, pristine Raleigh. And then again, just to switch another mode of action late into the season, Captan or Zampro. You see that I have Carbaryl on each of these sprays, or Carbaryl, however you want to pronounce it. Carbaryl is an insecticide, but it also is a really good surfactant too, at least in my experience. So I've always mixed insecticides with a fungicide, especially Carbaryl, and Carbaryl acts as a sticker spreader. It acts as a good surfactant to help that pristine or Raleigh or Captan really stick to the canopy, stick to the leaves, stick to the spray coverage, and it helps. I have an imidacloprid in here. That's for Pierce's disease. I've heard Pierce's disease isn't a problem here, but I don't know if it's just maybe a lack of yet to be found, because it's pretty prevalent in Texas. Now, it's also prevalent in humid areas too. It's not such a problem in Panhandle, but here kind of in Stillwater, it's in between. It's not totally arid, but it's not absolutely humid either. So, but I would do an imidacloprid through chemigation if you want. That's through your irrigation line. You can actually pump it through a Venturi pump through your irrigation system, and it gets taken up through the roots systemically. So that one's imidacloprid is put through the irrigation lines. Again, this is just an outline. If you're in a drier, less humid area, you might only spray 3, 4, 5 times. If you're in a wetter, more humid area, you might spray 8, 9, 10, 12, dare I say 20 times, but sometimes that's what it takes. Okay, spray program don'ts. I was researching and looking this up. Again, this is just what I found off the online. But some things you shouldn't do. You shouldn't mix Captan with oils, nor apply them 14 days of one another. I didn't know that. You shouldn't use sulfur 21 days within an oil, or apply sulfur at temperatures above 95 Fahrenheit. I didn't know that, just looking it up. This one I thought was pretty interesting. The fungicide called Pristine. It says to not apply that to Norton, Chamberson, and Norate grapevines. I don't know. That's just what I found. Maybe I can try it as a research and spray maybe 1 or 2 Chamberson vines here at our vineyard with Pristine just to see what happens. But I don't know. This is what I found online, and I just want to pass it on. You can look into it yourself. Or if you have Chamberson and you've sprayed Pristine, please tell me. I don't know. It's good not to mix Ranman with a surfactant. For some reason, that fungicide just doesn't like surfactants. And then obviously don't spray at harvest. If you're going to harvest on Saturday, but you think, oh, I should get a spray in today, or, the Monday before, like, don't ever spray at harvest. Cut your sprays 3 weeks, 2 weeks before harvest. Again, your fungicides have a post-harvest interval, but just be smart. Never spray at harvest. And then keep a spray record. It's the law. You have to keep a spray record for 2 years for each product you use. So if you spray Pristine Rally and Carbaryl at the same time, you have to record it down. And if you do it a month later, you have to record it. Keeping a record helps make decisions for future sprays too, especially just as you go throughout your growing season. If you sprayed really well and you saw 0 diseases, that's awesome. Replicate that the next year. If you sprayed, still you thought you sprayed good, but you saw some outbreaks here and there, remember that for next year, and you can kind of change your program. And then keeping a record, again, it's just smart. So keep a record of all your sprays and never spray near honeybees. That's a big one. I have to say that. Don't spray near honeybees. They're endangered or becoming endangered, or it's just don't spray near honeybees.
Just don't do it.
Okay, so fungal diseases. Now I'll move on to the actual diseases and what they look like and their timing of inoculation and stuff. I picked what I think are 6 common vineyard fungus, which is black rot, botrytis bunch rot, downy mildew, anthracnose, phomopsis, powdery mildew. And I think I've seen each of these in a vineyard at one point in time or another. In parentheses is their Latin name. I'm not going to try to pronounce them, but these are the common vineyard fungus. So black rot will attack pretty much every part of the grape, of the grapevine: leaves, petioles, shoots, tendrils, and berries. All Vitis vinifera varieties are susceptible. Totally. If you're growing European, you're likely to get black rot if you don't have a good spray program. Lesions appear as tan, circular to irregular shaped leaves on spots. So despite the name, they're actually brown, but the fruiting bodies, I think, are black. That's why it's called black rot. But it appears, that bottom left corner, as just a brown speckled lesions on the leaves, on the rachis, on the petioles, on the shoots. Black fruiting bodies of the fungus are usually visual inside the margins. So even though it's a brown spot, if you look inside that spot, you'll see a black ring. That's black rot. For fruit on the right, it looks like that: tiny reddish brown circular spots, and it just deteriorates the berry. So this is called black rot, and it's pretty common. Usually early in the season, April, May. The disease cycle: the fungus overwinters primarily on grape clusters, mummified grape clusters, which is another reason why it's important to get rid of all your clusters after harvest, or during the pruning season. All of it. Get mummified clusters out of your vineyard. Spring rains and dews trigger the release of spores. So ascospores cause the primary leaf and blossom infection. 80 degrees Fahrenheit is the optimum temperature for fungal infection, and can happen as little as 6 hours in leaf wetness. So a really good spring day when it's warm, 80 degrees, and it's humid and it's rainfall, black rot's going to come out. It's just, that's what it does. Management for black rot: again, remove mummies from your vineyard. I need to take that advice myself, because I did see some mummies in the vineyard the other day when I was out there. Always good to remove those. Improve canopy airflow. Of course, we always talk about, your canopy during the growing season. And that's a reason. The more airflow you have through your vineyard, the better it can dry the leaves, and there's less humid. Because as you know, especially if you grow grapes, inside of the canopy is a microclimate. It could be very humid, and it's really good for disease infections. Again, fungicide spray should be used to prevent the infection. So spray early and spray often and as much as you can. Well, not as you know what I mean, as much as you can. Spray what's good and appropriate. Manzate and Zyram are highly effective against black rot. And then there's some more at the bottom: Rally, Metal, Procure. All those are also pretty good for post-infection. So if you do see a little bit of black rot in your vineyard, you hit it with a Rally, hit it with a Procure, and it should relieve within 72 hours of infection. Botrytis bunch rot, also called gray mold. I've seen this once or twice in my life, but I haven't seen it a lot. It's usually, I'll get to it. It attacks soft tissue, grapes, floral parts, the ripening fruit. Tight cluster variety are more susceptible. Zinfandel is very tight clustered, and so it can get some gray rot. I think this is cool weather, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. It overwinters in sclerotia, which is just a hardened mass of mycelium. Yeah, the fungal growth is spread and enhanced by cool and wet weather. So it's more of a cooler climate, but still, I mean, it gets cold here, so it can happen here. 34 to 86 is optimum temperature for spore germination. And then when spring conditions are suitable, sclerotia will germinate, release spores. You know, all spring, cool spring weather is triggers botrytis. Management of run trot, again, increase the canopy airflow whilst reducing humidity is beneficial. Shoot positioning and removing leaves from the fruiting zone helps because this is a cluster disease. Fungicide applications for botrytis is preventative. Again, all these are preventative. Most important during bloom. And then again, pristine and elevate are two good fungicides for botrytis. Downy mildew. So this is one that does happen as well. This attacks young leaves as well as flowers and fruiting clusters. Primarily disease for warm, humid regions. So here is a good candidate for downy mildew. Vitis vinifera are much more susceptible than hybrids. You know, Vitis vinifera are totally disease prone. Infections are common on foliage, especially for young leaves. And then I have pictures there, what it looks like. On the top right, it has this mosaic yellow look. That's just what it looks like. But on the underside of the leaf, you have these downy growths of white fungus, mycelium, I guess. Of course, yeah, it is. But it's the difference between powdery mildew and downy mildew is that downy mildew is always on the underside of the leaf. So they first appear as light yellow mosaic looking spots on the top side of the leaf. But if you flip the leaf over, you'll see that white mycelium, that is the fungus, that's downy mildew. And that's the giveaway. Powdery mildew will be white all across all parts of the grape, but downy mildew will only appear on the underside of the leaf. So the fungus overwinters as dormant spores and infected leaves, and in the spring, they germinate and are blown by the wind. Primary infection requires rain and temperatures above 52 Fahrenheit. So again, springtime, spring rains, you know, spring warmth, downy mildew will begin. Management for downy mildew, canopy airflow. Again, just make sure your canopy is not overgrown. Make sure it's you know, managed well. Canopy airflow to promote dryness, and then apply fungicides 2 weeks before bloom and continue to apply 2 weeks after fruit set. So again, early spring growth, bud break, 2 to 10 inch shoot growth. You see little flower clusters starting to form. You want to spray for downy mildew. Rimadil, Mancozeb, Prophyte are all good fungicides for downy mildew. And you just incorporate them into your spray program. Anthracnose. So anthracnose attacks all part of the vine. Stems, leaves, petioles, tendrils, young shoots, berries. Anthracnose will hit all parts of the vine. Occurs primarily in very wet years. Young leaves are more susceptible, and it looks like the bottom middle picture is just brown. It's a brown pinhead spot that quickly enlarges into a circular patch. The thing about identifying anthracnose is that it's always circular. Especially, you can see on the right picture that the berries there, the clusters, anthracnose will always appear circular. And that bottom line there, bird's eye spot is kind of the nickname, I guess some people say. But anthracnose is always circular. On older wood, infections can look like small craters. On the bottom left is a picture on I guess that's some green tissue, but it's like a sunken crater. Not to be confused with phomopsis, which is elongated. But anthracnose is circular, brown, and sunken. And it's, you know, and good to be able to identify these so you know what to spray, even though if you see it, it's too late to spray, but this is what it looks like nonetheless. So anthracnose overwinters on infected canes is sclerotia. In the spring, sclerotia germinate, produce spores. Cool, wet weather in the spring and early summer are most favorable. Some management techniques for anthracnose. you can prune out infected wood actually at dormancy and remove all infected wood prior to bud break. So if you actually spot it in your vineyard now, you could, well, wait till pruning, but like, no, you can cut out anthracnose, get rid of it, drag it away from your vineyard and burn it, and then apply fungicides during dormant cutting. I've heard of people that will actually prune and then spray. They'll prune, as soon as they're finished with pruning, they'll spray for anthracnose. Why not? Apparently that's a good thing to do. Mancozeb especially, Captan, sulfur lime. So if you see anthracnose at pruning this year, try to prune it out if you can. And then if you're able, go ahead and apply a dormant season fungicide for anthracnose, and that'll help prevent outbreaks, come March or April. Phomopsis. So this is one that it's not, it looks similar, but the bottom right picture shows elongated lesions. So phomopsis has elongation, infection, and anthracnose is like a sunken crater. So anyways, phomopsis, this disease is most destructive in cold, wet weather. Inactive in the warm, dry summer months, but may become active again in the fall as wet weather returns. So this is a cooler season infection. Vines produce shoots that die back quickly or fail to produce shoots at all. So phomopsis is usually on the canes or the shoots. Dark black elliptical lesions can appear on the leaves, as you see there. They're very small. It's a zoomed up picture. On the leaf, infections appear small. Black dark centers on the rachis or the canes or the shoots. Lesions are sunken and black and are elongated and can kill clusters. So black fruiting bodies overwinter in infected wood. Again, phomopsis and anthracnose both are on the wood usually. In the spring, spores are released by, and spread by rain. Spores germinate when temperatures are between 34 and 90 Fahrenheit. Optimum temperatures are between 59 and 68. It prefers cooler weather. Symptoms appear 21 to 30 days after infection, which is kind of unfortunate because you can be infected with phomopsis, in April and not see it until May, which is so just be sure you're spraying for it as well. Prune out infected canes if you're able to. Infection can be prevented by early season application fungicides. Again, Ramolidil, pretty sure I'm pronouncing that right, or any AI of Captan or Zyram. Those are two good phomopsis fungicides. Okay, last one is powdery mildew. And this is one I see almost every year. Every year I've worked at least in a vineyard, powdery mildew is prevalent. It's probably maybe the biggest disease we face. I say that loosely, but I see it often. Powdery mildew affects vineyards worldwide, and Vitis vinifera are highly susceptible to it. Lesions begin as small grayish-white patches of fungal growth and appear on the upper surface of the leaf. So not to be confused, downy mildew is on the bottom side. Powdery mildew is all over, actually. It primarily appears on the upper leaf, but can coalesce to cover the entire leaf. Blooming clusters can be infected, causing flower dieback. And then severe infections can destroy a crop and affect the vineyard development itself. So if you have a severe outbreak of downy mildew, not only will it hurt your current season's growth, but the vines simply can't photosynthesize and have normal physiological function because the disease is so severe. So if you have a severe disease, you need to eradicate it because it's affecting next year's growth as well. It's affecting just the way the vine photosynthesizes and stores carbohydrates, and it can just ruin a vineyard. So spray for powdery mildew. I see it every year. Powdery mildew will overwinter in the vineyard and then release its spores in the spring. Again, nothing new there. Optimum temperatures between 70 to 85. So it's a warmer season disease. And sunlight can inhibit powdery mildew or PM. The disease favors the shade. Again, this is also important to have good canopy management, because if you have a really overgrown canopy and you're not maintaining it, the disease, powdery mildew especially, can eat you up. So be careful and have good canopy airflow, shoot thin if you need, hedge, all that good stuff. And it's best to apply the fungicide preventatively rather than curatively. And again, Rally, Abound, or Stylidol are really good. Stylidol would be an eradicant, but Rally or Abound would be a good contact or systemic rather fungicide to help prevent the disease to even begin with. I think that covered everything. Again, just want to give some credit. A lot of information was from Virtual Viticulture Academy, Mr. Fritz Westover. And then I pulled a lot of disease information from the Grape Growers Handbook written by Mr. Ted and Coldhammer. I think that's all. That concludes the presentation. So if we have any questions, I'll stop the recording and we can share. Let's see here. Let me stop my recording though. Oh, there we go.